The maitre d' lifted his eyes just enough to notice me and shook his head. "I'm sorry, ma'am. There's no reservation under your name." I stood there, frowning without realizing it. That can't be right. I was invited to dinner with my husband's family. They should already be here. He kept his polite tone but didn't yield. "I just checked. There is a table for 6 under the name Morgan Sinclair, however." The sentence died when a familiar voice crossed the room. "Claire, darling?" Morgan's light tone carried a laugh that never reached her eyes. "Did you really think I'd save you a seat tonight?" I turned. She came toward me in measured steps, dressed in flawless designer clothes, her platinum blonde hair pinned without a strand out of place. Behind her, Adam seemed glued to his chair, looking anywhere but at me. Next to him, Charlotte and Emma leaned toward each other, trading whispers that ended in crooked smiles. The maitre d' cleared his throat, anxious for a decision. All I could hear was Morgan's question echoing between the empty tables that separated me from that reservation, where apparently my name wasn't on the list. My stomach twisted, but I kept my face impassive. "I don't understand," I said, my tone steady. Morgan flashed a smile that never reached her eyes. "Sweetheart, I honestly didn't think you'd show up." She let out a short laugh. "This dinner's just for family. A place like this is a bit above your comfort zone, right? Maybe you'd feel better somewhere less fancy." Charlotte stifled a laugh behind her glass. Emma fixed her eyes on the napkin. Adam, silent, molded the handle of his fork as if he could disappear. Shame clung to me. The air felt heavy with judgment. Several tables were already following the scene, eager for the next chapter. I should have known. For years, Morgan had made sure to prove I'd never be good enough for her son. I didn't have the right last name, the right prep school diploma. I'd never stood in the same showcase of privilege she moved through so lightly. Since the engagement, she'd worked to remind me I was a guest, not part of the portrait. Still, I stayed there, feeling every stare cut through me, gripping my purse, trying to decide my next move, a move that, like it or not, I already sensed would change the pace of the night. It started slowly. A joke here about my taste for simple things, an invitation that vanished from the family calendar, an expensive gift for Adam while I got a polite smile that never reached the eyes. Little by little, the message was clear. I was the odd piece in the Sinclair's picture. Tonight, though, she traded the blade for a sword. She booked the hottest restaurant in town, left my name off, and waited for me to stop at the door like a guest without credentials. The glow on her face showed the plan was working. It should have hurt, and for a moment it did. I felt my blood rise and the curious gaze of other diners land on me. But in the space of a breath, something clicked inside. I straightened my shoulders, let a slow, deliberate smile spread, and saw the brief flicker in Morgan's eyes. Without hurry, I turned to the maitre d'. "Could you call the owner, please?" I asked, my voice calm as still water. She laughed, the sound echoing through the room. "Go ahead! You really think the owner will drop everything to talk to you?" I kept smiling, looked at her, and waited. The silence between us stretched tight. I knew something she didn't, and that certainty was already tilting the night in my favor. "Yes, the owner here is an old friend, and in a moment my mother-in-law will learn that in the clearest way possible." Morgan's smile stayed, but doubt sparked in her eyes. For years, she'd treated me like an extra. Tonight, she turned her disdain into a show, in front of Adam, his sisters, and a dining room holding its breath. The air grew thick, waiting for the next move. I gripped my purse. The maitre d', torn between protocol and discomfort, hesitated. Before he could decide, a deep voice broke the stalemate. "Claire." I turned and saw Daniel Leon emerge from the side corridor. Just past 50, gray hair neatly combed, bespoke suit. The calm of the man who ran the city's most sought-after restaurant. His arrival rearranged the room. Waiters cleared a path, diners whispered, even the Sinclair clan stepped back. I stayed where I was, feeling every eye swing to us while the story Morgan had written silently slipped from her hands. Morgan's brows shot up when she realized Daniel greeted me with genuine warmth, not the contempt she expected. "Daniel," I smiled, as if greeting an old ally. "It's been a while, hasn't it?" He scanned every face at the Sinclairs' table, Morgan, Adam, the sisters, then looked back at me. "It has. What brings you here tonight?" I nodded toward the group, now far less confident than minutes ago. "My name vanished from the reservation," I said almost casually. "Strange glitch, huh?" Daniel narrowed his eyes at the subtext, then slipped back into his elegant calm. "That can't be." Morgan huffed, arms crossed, while the room, suddenly more alert, waited for the next move. "Come on, be sensible. You really think this place will free up a seat just for her? Dinner's private. Show up without a reservation. You go home." Daniel's face didn't move an inch. "I completely agree, Mrs. Sinclair," he said calmly. "We don't make last-minute exceptions." The remark hit hard, but before I could react, he turned to the maitre d'. "Unless, of course, it isn't an exception. Claire isn't showing up. She's part of the house." The dining room held its breath. Charlotte nearly dropped her glass. Emma darted glances between me and Daniel. Adam gripped his silverware like an anchor. Morgan doesn't know how to step back. A dry laugh climbed her throat. "Family? That's new. Claire's just my son's wife. I guarantee she has zero connection to this restaurant." "Actually," I cut in, firm, "Daniel and I crossed paths a long time ago." Morgan narrowed her eyes. "How so?" I leaned in, my voice low but clear to nearby tables. "Before I said yes to Adam, I lived behind the scenes of fine dining. Daniel was the one who opened that door for me." The buzz died. Morgan searched for a comeback, but Daniel stepped forward, words sure and solid. "Claire wasn't just a passerby," he explained. "She trained at my side right after culinary school. I taught her every nuance of top-tier service, from the invisible care for guests to the harmony of the room. Out of dozens of interns, she stood out." Morgan's jaw clenched. As much as she wanted to shrink my story to cocktail hour jokes, there were chapters she didn't know. Chapters now laid out in the middle of that restaurant, dismantling her show in front of everyone. "Family?" she repeated, almost scoffing. "You're confused. Claire is only my son's wife. She has no ties to this place. In fact," I said serenely, "Daniel and I have known each other quite a while." Morgan narrowed her look, trying to solve an unexpected riddle. "Since when?" I leaned just enough for the nearby tables to catch every syllable. "Before I married Adam, I worked backstage in haute cuisine. Daniel was my first mentor." The murmur at the table fell into thick silence. Morgan opened her mouth, ready to counter, but Daniel stepped in, voice cutting through the air. "Claire wasn't merely an employee," he said. "When she left culinary school, she interned with me. I taught her every detail of exemplary service, the rhythm of courses, the unseen care for guests. Among the many young people who passed through my hands, she stood out. Each sentence landed like a piece flipping the board. Charlotte froze. Emma watched wide-eyed. Adam stayed silent, hands clenched on his napkin. Morgan's jaw locked. The gears of her plan faltered. Right there, in front of the attentive dining room, she realized there was a part of my story she'd never considered. A chapter that didn't fit her discreet jabs and was now dismantling the narrative she'd tried to build. I, still standing, kept the same calm tone, ready to reveal the next card while anticipation hung in the air, tense, waiting for the next move. It wasn't my final act yet. I turned to the maitre d', embarrassed beside the podium. "I believe Mr. Leon's word is enough to get me a seat." He straightened at once. "Certainly, Miss Claire. I'll set a table right away." Color climbed Morgan's face like an unchecked fire. "Outrageous!" she hissed. "You're favoring her just because she once worked with you?" Daniel let out a low chuckle. "It's not favoritism. It's recognition. Respect opens doors." The maitre d' signaled a waiter who hurried to place a chair right next to Adam, where for the first time that night, no one dared question my presence. The buzz around us grew. Every glance said the game had changed. Truth served at the table needs no permission. "Well, look at that," I said, letting an almost innocent surprise slip. "Turns out there's no shortage of chairs after all." Morgan's fingers stiffened on the tablecloth, clenched as if squeezing her own pride. "This is unacceptable." I leaned in just enough for her indignation to reach other tables. What's unacceptable was thinking I'd swallow the humiliation in silence. She drew a deep breath, nostrils flaring with irritation. "You're making a scene." I shrugged. "I only came to have dinner with my family. I thought that was exactly your plan." Before she could answer, Daniel laid a hand on my shoulder. "I'll ask the chef to prepare something special for you, Claire." Morgan coughed, surprised by the courtesy. "Special?" Daniel smiled unhurriedly. "Compliments of the house?" Morgan boiled inside, but for the moment she could do nothing. Adam, still silent, sipped his wine. A fleeting look crossed his face. Relief, embarrassment, maybe guilt. Dinner had barely begun, and Morgan Sinclair would soon learn that getting rid of me wasn't so simple. A waiter appeared and set a polished silver plate in front of me. Next, an amuse-bouche, delicate and almost sculptural. Daniel's treat. Morgan watched every gesture, her face flushed crimson. I murmured, lifting my fork to carve the tiny work of art. "This is divine." I savored the first bite, tasting not just the flavor, but the thick silence settling in. Across the table, Charlotte and Emma traded cautious glances. Adam remained unmoving, studying his wine as if answers hid there. Morgan, however, isn't the kind of woman who accepts defeat without a fight. She drank her wine in a controlled swallow and set the glass down with exaggerated firmness, as if the sound might reclaim the authority slipping from her fingers. "So," she said, flashing a smile that barely hid the tension, "obviously someone from your background would end up knowing a restaurant owner." I raised an eyebrow. "Restaurant owner?" She gestured vaguely, as if brushing crumbs away. "Service people, waitresses, chefs. Not exactly professions in the Sinclair pedigree." There was the heart of her setup. Leaving my name off the reservation wasn't enough. She needed, in front of everyone, to remind me that by her standards, I was still the girl who came from nowhere and just happened to cross the family's path. I wet my lips with wine before speaking. "You say that like it's some kind of disaster." Morgan's eyes flashed. Irritation, maybe a hint of surprise. She wanted to see me falter. She wouldn't. "I just meant," she went on, voice feigning delicacy, "that it must have been challenging for you to adapt to a family like ours." Her words sounded soft, but every syllable dripped with pride. Adam stayed mute, eyes anywhere but mine. Then it hit me. The problem wasn't only his mother's sharp tongue, but his silence. This wasn't the first time Morgan tried to humiliate me. At the wedding, when she forgot to invite my family to the rehearsal dinner. At Christmas, when she gifted me a book titled Simple Recipes for the Clueless Wife. Last summer, when she commented that I should feel lucky because Adam gave me a chance. Each time he pretended not to hear, and I told myself it wasn't worth the fight, that I didn't want to be the spark for another conflict. This went beyond any discreet jab. It was a stage built to expose me, and he watched without lifting a finger. I set my wine glass down on the cloth, slow, deliberate. I leaned forward, forearms firm on the wood. "Morgan," I said in a calm, measured tone, "do you know what the real difference is between the two of us?" She turned, pulled by curiosity. I let a brief smile appear. Every one of my achievements came from my own effort. The air around the table grew heavy, like a door had just shut. Morgan stiffened. "Excuse me?" I held her gaze. "You heard me." I saw Charlotte hold her breath beside her. Emma pressed her lips together, fighting back a laugh. Morgan let out an impatient breath. "So you're suggesting everything I've achieved just landed in my lap?" I let the doubt hang between us. Before she could sharpen another sentence, I went on. "I didn't hitch myself to anyone's bank account. I didn't inherit a family title. I paved the road myself, step by step, and look where we are. I pointed one finger at the immaculate tablecloth. Notice, same table, same menu, same respectful nod from the chef. Morgan clenched her napkin until it crumpled, her knuckles white as chalk. Charlotte and Emma lost their smiles. Adam stared into his plate. For the first time since we said hello, the veil Morgan wears as armor slipped. It wasn't anger. It was fear. She'd spent years painting me as an opportunist clinging to her son, a foreign body that needed removing. Suddenly the story cracked. She realized with a quick jolt, I'm not out of place. I'm exactly where I chose to be. And more than anything, I'm not someone she can bend. I lifted my fork again and cut my food with rehearsed calm. Also, Morgan's heavy sigh gave away her annoyance that I'd taken over the conversation. What? I let the question linger before letting a slow smile bloom. It's smart to watch who you choose to look down on. I speared another bite, chewed slowly and finished, the world turns, and sometimes the person you dismiss ends up looking down at you. The faint clink of metal on porcelain was the only sound for what felt like a full minute. The air at the table thickened. Morgan, always flawless, held her face rigid. Her glass glittered under the pressure of her fingers, close to cracking. Adam sank into his chair, wishing he were invisible. Charlotte and Emma traded silent signals, gauging whether to step in. As for me, I savored not just the food, but the certainty of my place there. Morgan's face betrayed the shock before she could hide it. For a second, the facade of haughtiness, maintained with scolding looks and awkward silences, gave way. She'd always ruled rooms where everyone bows before even thinking of pushing back, but the fear that once paralyzed me was gone. She inhaled slowly, regathered herself, and set her glass down with a calculated clink. "I see you've stepped out of your own shadow, CLA," she said, her calm tone edged like a razor. "Congratulations on getting this far." I took another sip, staying impassive. Morgan tilted her head slightly, her lips forming a smile too sweet to be real. "Tell me then, if you're so self-sufficient, why do you let my son bankroll your everyday life?" The air seemed to get heavier. Charlotte exhaled softly. Emma shifted in her chair. Adam pulled his shoulders in, trying to vanish. Morgan caught every reaction, savoring the moment, sure that everyone was now waiting for my answer. I set my glass down carefully. I wanted every move to be clear, almost choreographed. "I don't follow your insinuation," I said, wearing a look of confusion. The tension hung between us like an unresolved chord, and all the eyes around the table only made the silence ring louder. Morgan leaned over the table and dripped her line like sweet poison. "Honey, let's be honest. My son is the reason you keep that cute little boutique hobby. You don't need to punch a clock. You put on a show so you look professional. Charming, isn't it?" She tilted her head, wearing that smile she loves, the one that reminds everyone who signs the checks. "You preach self-reliance, but when night falls, you're still living off his allowance." There it was, the blow she'd been honing since the appetizer, the clincher, designed to break me in front of the whole family. I didn't answer right away. I let the silence echo among the glasses while Adam stared at his plate and his sisters held their breath, expecting me to wilt. Then something unexpected happened. I laughed, a full, clear laugh that bounced around the room. Morgan's smile wobbled. "Did I miss the joke?" she hissed, gripping her silverware. I set my napkin beside my glass, still laughing. "I just realized how far from reality you live, Morgan." Her eyelids narrowed. "What did you say?" I lifted a hand toward Adam, choosing every word like placing pieces on a board. "You really think he pays my bills?" I arched an eyebrow. "How sweet." Charlotte coughed. Emma's lips formed a silent, "Oh." And Adam suddenly went pale. Morgan's smile vanished right away. "What are you talking about?" she asked. I let out a sigh. "You still see Adam as that perfect little boy, right? The boss, the provider, the hero who rescued me from a modest life." I tilted my chin slightly. "Well, Morgan, that's not how this marriage works." Her shoulders went rigid. "You know what's funny about that?" I went on, letting the sentence dangle. Half of Adam's deals, those investment projects you admire, were bankrolled by me. The room dropped into thick silence. Morgan's eyes went wide as if the floor had given way under her. "What do you mean?" she whispered. I offered an icy smile. "Adam didn't get where he is on his own," I added, still looking at him even though I was speaking to her. When he decided to invest, he didn't have the capital. I had savings, I had strategy. I raised my glass. The crystal chimed between us. Her fingers trembled. "That's absurd." I shrugged. "The truth, Morgan, is simple. Your son's success was built on my resources, drafted in my spreadsheets, and protected by my backing. Deny it all you want. Every number he flashes has my name between the lines." Charlotte and Emma searched Adam's eyes for any reaction, but he stayed frozen, silent, as if each word had nailed him to the floor. I tilted my head slightly. "You really think you'll shrink me to a submissive housewife? That would be hilarious, Morgan, because the truth is simple. Adam depends way more on me than I do on him." The flush that spread over Morgan's face nearly reached her ears. I leaned back, arms folded calmly. "You've spent years trying to convince me I don't fit here, when I'm the one who kept this marriage. And as a bonus, your precious family name, breathing." Emma gripped the back of her chair as if the ground had dropped. Charlotte lost the power of speech. And Adam finally forced out a voice. "Claire," he croaked, "maybe we could—" I raised a hand, shutting down any retreat. "No, Adam," I said, steady. "You didn't earn the right to suggest maybe after sitting silent while your mother tried to belittle me." Only then did Morgan look at her son and seem to see him for real, not the flawless hero, but a man with no spine. Her pride wilted on the spot, and for the first time Adam looked small, smaller than the pedestal she'd built, an inversion of roles delicious to watch. I straightened, smoothing my dress. "I believe my part here is done." Morgan's nostrils flared. "You can't just leave like that." Without answering her, I turned to Daniel, waiting a few steps away, discreet. "Daniel, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for hosting." He dipped his head, amused. "The pleasure is always mine, Claire." Then I faced Adam. "You coming with me?" He stayed frozen, gaze bouncing between me and his mother. In that second, it was clear. Adam hadn't chosen me before, and he wouldn't start now. Morgan's smile rose, victorious. I smiled too. Not a smile of surrender, but of someone who knows the next move, who's read the whole board before the first piece is played. She had no idea my decision was already made. Soon, she'd regret trying to shrink me, because I was about to show her and Adam the reach of my power, and I wouldn't have to raise my voice to do it. Adam stayed put. No surprise. I left the restaurant. The night air brushed my face, but all I felt was resolve. The clink of silverware behind me faded. The only thing that mattered now was the next step. This dinner was the final spark, a truth ripened over years. It was time to move the pieces with precision. I grabbed my phone. My fingers flew over the keys. "Proceed. Start first thing tomorrow." The reply came in seconds. "Understood. Draft divorce papers will be with you by noon." That would be just the first document. The rest would come in a cascade, one sheet after another, until everything changed. I let out my breath in a slow stream as I watched the lit screen. Divorce didn't scare me. What hurt was realizing how long I'd pretended Adam was by my side when I'd really spent years married only to myself. Enough. What I lived tonight was the spark I needed. And Morgan. She has no clue about the chaos I'm about to unleash on the reality she monitors so meticulously. I got home before he did, plenty of time to set the plan in motion. I went straight to the office, the one he uses to manage investments, and punched in the safe code. He'd never change the combo. Rookie mistake. Inside, stacks of statements, portfolios, and contracts formed the financial skeleton holding up his name. The document I wanted was on top, the agreement tying his record profits to my initial capital. I held the paper, scanning every clause like an old friend. Those pages proved I'm the foundation of the fortune he flaunts. Morgan praises her son as a business titan, but without my signature, he's just a collector of empty promises. I photographed the contract and put everything back exactly in place. I don't need to take the paper when the proof is beyond anyone's reach. In the bedroom, I pulled out a suitcase and started filling it. No rage, no rush, just razor-sharp clarity. It wasn't impulse, it was calculus. Every folded piece of clothing was a solved equation. When Adam opened the front door, he found me sitting on the couch, suitcase beside me, shoulders relaxed. He stopped at the threshold, feet rooted, as if wondering if it was already too late to come back. "Claire?" he called, voice cracked. I looked up, suitcase already by the door. "I thought you wouldn't come." Adam's eyes stuck to the closed zipper. His chest seemed to forget to breathe. "What kind of madness is this?" I squared my shoulders, firm. "It's not madness, it's an exit." His lips moved without sound. "Claire." "The choice was yours," I reminded him, low but clear. "Back at the restaurant when your mother reduced me to nothing and you chose to stare at your napkin." A muscle jumped in his jaw. "I just wanted to avoid a scene." "Avoid?" I let out a short laugh. "She orchestrated every detail to tear me down, booked a table without my name, poured insults as a side dish, served contempt for dessert. And you, silent spectator." I took a step, shrinking the space between us. He backed up a fraction, always watching, never stepping in. With a hand on his neck, he searched for some excuse. "You know how she is?" I exhaled slowly. "I understand, Adam. I understand that when it matters, you disappear. They call it politeness. I call it cowardice." He lifted his eyes, hurt, as if I'd crossed a sacred line. "Our whole marriage you let your mother set how to treat me. I tolerated it, Adam. I waited for you to take the reins, but tonight, right now, I see who's really in front of me." He swallowed his pride dry. "Claire, please, let's talk." I let out a cold sigh. That's the point. There's no more talking to do. I slung the suitcase strap over my shoulder and started down the hall. When my hand was on the doorknob, his voice cut the air. "I'm going to fight this." I turned slowly. "Excuse me?" Adam's face darkened. Every syllable came out hoarse. "If you think you're leaving this marriage with half of everything, you're dreaming." I held his gaze for a few seconds, then smirked. "Oh, Adam, you should read your own contracts more carefully." Perplexity flashed across his face. "What are you talking about?" I cut him off before the panic became a question. "Nothing you've achieved would exist without my capital. It was my money that fed your first investments, and, surprise, I kept every receipt." The color drained from his face. I stepped forward, lowering my voice to almost a whisper. "I let you use my assets, let you turn numbers into buildings, stocks, and fat accounts. But now," I tilted my head, still smiling, "now I want every cent back." Adam stepped back, rattled by the first blow of truth. He thought he could intimidate me. He never understood who he was playing against. He froze in the doorway, face colorless, jaw tight. I saw the moment he realized I wasn't just leaving. I was ripping the ground out from under him. His mouth opened, ready to argue, beg, or roll out the control tactics he loves, but I cut him off before a sound escaped. "I'll be staying at the penthouse," I announced, adjusting my bag on my shoulder. He frowned. "What penthouse?" I tilted my head, letting a half-smile slip. "Adam, the penthouse you believe is yours." Confusion turned to panic right before my eyes. "The downtown one?" he stammered. "The one I registered in my name?" "Exactly," I answered calmly. "My lawyer pulled the deed this morning. It never belonged to you." His nostrils flared in a furious breath. "You wouldn't dare!" "I already did." I opened my purse, pulled out an envelope, and slid it across the counter. He hesitated, then tore the seal. His eyes ran over the pages, fingers shaking. This, he swallowed. "This says you own 51% of my investment firm." I nodded slightly. "Exactly." He started to gasp for air. Impossible." I shrugged. Nothing impossible. I kept the original share, remember? The record never changed names. You just assumed it did because you never bothered to read the fine print. I watched shock flood his face, the math happening behind his eyes. CLA, he said tense. You can't take this from me. I smiled. I'm not taking anything. It's already mine. He staggered and grabbed the granite countertop. The same man who let his own mother humiliate me in silence while she ground my dignity to dust was now tasting his own powerlessness. I don't understand, he stammered. Why? Why are you doing this? For the first time in a long while, my chest felt light. Because, Adam, I finally recognized my worth. Then I pivoted on my heels and walked out the door, knowing I wouldn't come back. 30 days later, I settled onto the penthouse balcony, legs crossed, a champagne glass balanced in my hand. My lawyer slid the papers across the marble. It's official. You're free. I signed with a sigh that sounded like applause to my ears, glancing at the city below and already mapping the next move. I let my breath out slowly as my fingers slid over the thick paper. It felt like freedom. In the past weeks, everything had spun at wild speed. The legal fight, short and devastating. Adam tried to resist, crashed meetings, demanded sweeter clauses, threatened to drag me through courts, but his posture collapsed the moment my lawyers laid out proof that I, not him, controlled most of the company. Morgan, outraged, called me spitting insults and called me an opportunist. I answered only once. If you'd raised him differently, we wouldn't be here. After that, I muted the contact. Morgan Sinclair was no longer my concern. I raised the champagne glass, savoring the moment, when the phone buzzed with an almost comic tone. Adam, can we talk? I tilted a smile, set the crystal down and typed, Me, about what? The clock's hand moved a bit, then came, Adam, I just have no idea what to do next. I sighed and shook my head. Truly pathetic. I spent years waiting for him to come for me, to become the partner I thought I'd chosen. I waited for him to face his mother, to fight by my side the way I fought for him. But now I saw clearly. He was someone who always hid behind other people's power, incapable of building anything without crutches. To top it off, he would need me more than ever, and I didn't need him for a single thing. I sent the last message. Me. That's no longer my problem. And I blocked the number. For the first time, I chose myself, and that act was the greatest show of strength I've ever made.